So we'll start again. Take two.
Yeah.
So Jim,
Take two. Yeah.
Meghdeep can bring back his smirk and smile if he wants to.
I
So
already thought of it and I'm laughing inside.
Jim, you've been working with not just Mr. A.R. Rahman, but many other composers down south as well as in Bombay, like Shankar Ehsaan Loy, Preetham, and many others. So, with the kind of timeline pressures or with the kind of approach towards work, what are the differences you find in different composers? Is it a different thing down south, different thing in Bombay? What have been your experiences?
Definitely, it's a lot different down south. As in, at least I'm talking again early days, people were very organized. So if they say the background score starts on a Monday, the moment you walk in there, the reels are ready, things are marked. There is an arranger who sits and tells you exactly, okay, you are working from this scene from here. The theme is also set. Maybe they take a song theme and say, okay, this is the melody you need to use. So there itself, so which means by afternoon, you're already on your first scene of music, whereas you come down to maybe to Bombay or something where most of the time you find that nothing is ready. You get the reels where maybe, so let's have lunch and then start. So then after lunch, then we watch the movie. So the first day is just nothing. Then they'll be deciding, okay, should we use this theme or not? That theme or not? Okay, let's try this theme. And also we'll try this theme. So in fact, in one score, I remember we had two different themes for two different people. Then halfway through, I like this theme. I think we should use it for this character. Oh my God, which means you have to think of it. So which means you need to go back to the drawing board now and interchange the entire thing. So it was quite interesting that way. But again, South also is now becoming a little chaotic in its own way. See, earlier we had just a music director and a director to. So I'm again now talking very practical to satisfy in terms of your score or maybe if it's a song. Right now, there are like 20 people whom you have to satisfy and say, okay, so even if the director and the music director likes the scene, there's an AD who says, no, we should try this, no, we should try that. So they put something into this guy's head and next morning he comes, can we try another approach for this? So what you thought was a finished scene is again reopened and you look into it. Again, I don't know whether we can mention names, but I worked with a couple of music directors who were so organized, when we worked on a particular film. But again, see, as music producers and somebody who writes music, what happens is we score a scene, then we move on to the next scene. So which means we've forgotten what happened in the first scene, correct? Unless it's a theme, which maybe we would have. But if you're just working on generic scenes and you move on, finally, let's say, and then you present it to the director. So it so happened that we finished the first half. So we called the director and the producer to watch the film. So as we were watching, there's this one scene which came. You won't believe it. All of us looked at each other. So imagine, so that's why we knew that the score wasn't connecting that one place. Anyway, it was all dark. We just previewed the entire first half. So the director then turns back and he says, very nice, everything is nice. Just that one scene, and he mentioned that same scene. So now you get it. So when something doesn't connect, see, we ourselves as musicians, we know. But at that time, because we did that for that day it connected. But maybe if we would have heard it the very next day, we could have made that correction. But then when you heard it after a week or so, it was like, man, this just doesn't fit in with the scene. So duration always, changes according to how the score is planned also, I would say. So most music directors don't plan their maybe the theme. So we are still putting together. So always in a score, I feel the first 5 days takes the longest. We might take, we would have finished maybe 8 to 10 minutes of music. But then when you look at it, the rest of the film, once it starts going and everything, themes are in place, then you find that everything moves much faster. And like the whole thing goes, let's say if you have a 15-day for a score, we spend close to 10 days on the first half. Second half is 5 days, which is including the climax at times. So that is where when we were talking about pressure in terms of, so they say, no, sir, we have to finish it by this. So that's when the pressure kicks in. First few days, it's like, wow, let's take it cool. Lunch breaks, coffee breaks, and, just chilling out. There'll be some cricket match, go watch that and come back. So so it completely changes at that time. But again, different music directors, completely different approach. So when you go there, you know what to expect. You know, um, and again, when you're working with a bigger team, see, actually, the logic goes: the bigger the team, let's say 5 or 6 people working on a score, obviously the time has to be maybe shorter, but in certain cases it's still longer. So I don't know. That uh, that completely depends on the music director, I would say. So again, now if you look at, I've done a lot of scores with Rahman. So he's very particular. So this is given to so and so. This okay? Is it done? So there's good delegation of work towards each person, and maybe a clear cut this thing. And I think you mentioned saying that Rahman has a lot of time, 2 months. Maybe it was like that, not anymore. It's all again back to the same 14, 15 days, because he's also pressurized with a lot of work. So he might be stuck with X amount of days to finish a score. So there also, so we burnt the midnight oil many a times. I met Gulraj once. He was so fresh. I was like sleepy. I think Meghdeep, I think both are, I know. Both of them are used to. I'm not a late night guy at all. So
correct. In fact, it's way past my own bedtime. I don't know how I'm doing this video, but
okay. No,
I think this is the first time we are talking to Aditya after 7 p.m. I think this is the first time ever in the history that I've known Mr. Mehta. We are speaking to him after 7 p.m. for the first time.
Right. No, but I mean anything but this. I mean it's a good to kind of good meeting to have, and a lot of learnings that can happen for the viewers also. So guys, now as music producers, do you feel nowadays we have old songs being redone? Right, Meghdeep has recently done one. Old songs are being recreated, for which you don't need the composer really. A music producer can also recreate a song. Do you think that is also possible? Or do you need the composer also to be present? Or a new composer can redo a song? What would be your views on that?
Jim, what do you think?
Meghdeep, if you would.
Meghdeep, sorry. Yeah.
Seriously? Isbar, let somebody else start, na?
My personal feeling was, see, when the original song was composed, see, there are two ways of looking at it. The original, very few times you find a better version of the original. Most of the time the original, because there's a lot of purity in it. I'm not just talking only film music. I'm talking every genre. I've heard English songs which were, when you hear the original and then somebody's done a remix for the current, maybe it is apt for this generation, which when they listen to it is like they connect to the song immediately. Maybe if they would have heard that track, they wouldn't have. But again, there's two ways to it. There are times you still go back to the original. The original still rocks, I would say, because maybe that's where, see, the whole thing was, the whole melody and the whole song was born there. Right now, you have something and you're just trying to decorate on top of it. So maybe that's why it doesn't work. So maybe, and also remixes generally tend to get into a dance mode. So you're trying to be very innovative at times. And I'm not saying that is wrong. There are times it can work. It can work big time. No wonder you have certain remixes which have become huge hits. But at times it can also go the other way around, so which we need to be a little careful about. That's when the music, like you said, do we need to have the music director? Maybe that might help, because the music director might come to know, man, I think my song is going the wrong direction, for all you know. He might be able to pinpoint that. See, when I wrote this line, maybe I had this in mind, this was the scenario. But maybe right now, this is just another song. It doesn't have a context to it. So maybe just my view.
Right. Gulraj, Meghdeep, on that? On recreations?
If I have to be very honest, I won't say I hate remixes. The thing is, frankly, it's, like we know in the West, like there are so many musicians who've made careers out of, doing covers and making, recreating songs which were probably classics and all. So my point is that, if a recreation or a remix, whatever you say, if it's done justifying the soul of the song, it's cool. It's really nice. But as Jim suggested, a lot of times, today, the reason to do a remix is probably to try to make it a dance song, or a song, something which people will dance to. And in the process, if you are not respecting, the inherent architecture of the song, and you're just forcefully adding things to it, to probably trying to make it sound cool or something, and that can result into some not so good results. I mean, that is where I have problem. That's, it's like, you're trying to forcibly make something relevant. And I always feel that every song is a product of that time and the inspiration and the idea which the composer and the producer had, and it was done at that point of time, so it should be always respected. So I feel that if it's done in a musical way, as an artist, I would say this: if it's done in a musical way, and even if it was supposed to be done maybe to make it dancey, probably the original version could be a more of a ballad kind of a song. But if it's redone to sound like a dance track, if it's done well, if it justifies the a lot of things, the musicality, the harmonic structure and all, it kind of, then I think it makes sense. Because I really feel that a lot of times it's the remix thing is, it's just done to, like to forcefully make it sound modern, or that kind of thing. And as well as answering your other part of the question, which, like, do you need a composer? Yes, as Jim mentioned, the composer's view would definitely would matter, because it was somewhere his vision. It kind of had it came out of his thing, and if he's around or accessible, it will be great. Some of the things that I've recently heard, that because of certain agreements not being in place and all, um, some other people, other than the composer, have the power to actually go ahead and do it on their own. And there have been some cases where even the composer's permissions were not taken. It's like, I feel, just as a acknowledgement, or as a respect, to the person who's created the song. It be the composer, it maybe also be the lyrics writer. That should be done, because I've heard such examples, where even the composer was even not informed that, even though if he didn't have the power or the legal authority to really dictate what should be done, or should it be done or not. But I think at least that should be done. The least you can do is at least inform the composer, that we are actually using your song and we would like to remix it. And if the composer is cool to get on board, or just help, it'll be really nice. So that's the thing, just summing it down. If it's done well, if a remix or a cover version is done well, respecting the song, uh, justifying the melody. I recently, not taking names, but there was one of the recent remixes where I saw a post of a friend, and he said that, I mean, a lot of people didn't really enjoy that remix, and he said that there's a generation of so many musicians, who got inspired by that original song, and then suddenly you take it up, and you just do something out of it, which is not really justifying and not doing good to the song. So I think it will be always a very subjective thing, because some people probably enjoy it, so you can't really say. But I just feel this is what my opinion would be.
Right, right. So, Meghdeep, your take on remixes, recreations.
So your original question was whether it can be done just by the music producers.
Yes.
I think it can be, and it should be, because primarily what music producers do here in India is basically the instrumental writing of a song, and the idea of remakes or remixes is to retain the top line, and then the instrumental writing is usually changed, which actually in turn changes the whole perception of the melody of the song. So I think I believe that remakes are primarily a producer's game, and we have two tangents into this. One is that you may not necessarily need the melody composer to give a new look to the song. For example, I have done a few Tagore songs. I've produced 2017. I did 2-3 songs of Gurudev Tagore, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of what I've done. And there have been so many versions of it. But my version, according to me, stands out, and I'm really proud of it because I've done it musically.
Yeah.
And I've done it as a music producer. So I think I think that's one way to look at it. The other way is how our film industry functions, is where there's always a situation. Now the original songs were written to a situation. They were all, the composer who was commissioned the job to do this was actually given the responsibility to understand every scene, every emotion about it. And then that song was brought out into the open as the the composers being the first authors I think they had they used to I would say align themselves very strongly with the script of the film. Considering the current times, music has become more of a marketing tool. It's no more or very seldom written to script. It is very seldom written to the situation. Songs have become montages, or not even montages, but endings of the film where the song was originally made to bring audiences to the theater. So, according to the times that we are in, music is more of a marketing tool now, and it is no more the music that we used to have in the 90s, and it has evolved definitely. And if a music producer, which he is capable of, primarily what we hear today is change in production of the song. The top line often remains the same, and there's probably a new antara, but again, the whole approach to the song is the approach of the production. So I think it's both the ways. It's either the original composer can be the first author of the song can be given the responsibility to create a remake, like how Vishal Shekhar did that. They took up the song's responsibility, that we will bring it out, it's our song. And then, because and then there are other situations where the song is entirely entrusted to another composer to bring out. And so I think it is very, very subjective, but in the end, it is the music that matters. And I think if somebody is able to give their own opinion, because music comes out of what we think about music. It's our opinion about its life. It's how we envision a song. So it's very subjective, and if we are able to take that particular song a step up, then why not? I mean, if we are able to give a very different outlook to the song, like there was a film Sadak jiska gana tha tumhe apna banane ka. So for Amal I produced a very Buddha bar launch sort of track, which was totally contrary. Or I did Suno Gaur Se for PM Narendra Modi film, which had a totally half time interpretation. And though they were remakes, but I'm proud of them. I'm very happy that I got the opportunity to suit up those original songs into my own custom settings. And I think that's one part of the thrill, but it's also a responsibility, because you may end up playing it wrong with these legendary gems. So I think it's a responsibility and a very subjective thing. Yes, music producers can handle remakes on their own, but it's again very subjective, and it has to be mutually respectful when it comes to dealing it out.
Right. Jim, have you been approached for any remix or remakes or recreations, as they're
No,
called?
I don't think so. No.
So when you started off, did you also start off with covers, or just to make
For
demos?
films, no. For film, no, never. I think I got into films before films. It was jingles, so that was again for a very short period. But of course, band-wise, we were a cover band. We used to do a lot of covers, but at the same time, we were writing our own materials. But that was way back in '92 or so, and that was when the Hindi pop and Tamil pop wasn't born at that time, but Hindi pop, yes, was going on. So whichever label we approached, they said, no, I wish this was in Hindi, but we did it in an English album. So, but otherwise, films-wise, no. Just, I think one or two songs, I think, was from an old film, which they took a couple of lines, I think. I don't remember which song, because I'm very bad with the repertoire of Hindi film songs. But I think they mentioned that this one particular song was from some old film. But again, like what Meghdeep said, it was a completely different arrangement. So I see, when you hear the original, you tend to go towards the original. But when you don't hear the original and it's just the tune is given to you, your total approach changes, So you don't know what the original was, so you can interpret it any way you want. So which can make it very, very interesting in its own way. So when you approach it differently, and then when you hear the original, it's like, oh my God, this is what the original was. It's quite interesting in its own way. But again, with this remix thing which we're talking about, there's also one more point of view which I think is the audience, which I've heard a few people say, because maybe again, see, there's a larger population who likes to keep a song intact in its own way. So I've had a lot of my friends who come and question me and said, what is happening with the film industry? So much of remixes, then any song you say, oh no, this, is an old song which they've remade. And I remember a couple of people questioning, I said, why aren't music directors composing newer songs? Is this a new trend? And because that's been happening over the past 2 or 3 years or so. So why is this happening? So audience have been questioning. See, at the end of the day, we also have to look at the audience. And again, there, like what Meghdeep said, there is one audience which is always open to listening to new things or a new approach to an old song. There are. But there are some people who say, oh man, this is like, So if you're going to look at a diehard Ilayaraja fan and if somebody's going to take that song and change it into, they're not going to like it, believe me, because they're like hardcore fans. So you know how it is. So that way. So like you said, it's subjective. We can debate on this, but, But there are times, the beauty about it is there are times when remixes have worked. That time it's really magical because, you've kept all the ingredients of the original song, but at the same time came up with something very interesting. That is like, so that's what, it's like, the ingredients all work together and it's going to be a super package. So when that works, awesome. I tell you, we will not have this debate. Even the audience is going to say, wow, you know what? Then they say, you heard the song? So when you go back and say, check, this is the original. So that's when the magic happens. But I don't think the percentage is low. That's
okay. So is this trend also there down south? Because we are not very aware of.
No, not much. Yeah, not much. Very little. They tried remixes, but they were very bad at it. I would say. I still remember there was a period between 2000 and because they make 4 or 5 songs for a film, but the album comes out with 10. So every song had a remix version of it. So it goes to a DJ and he throws in one beat because that's when I think maybe the club culture caught on quite a lot because clubs again were more Western music, film music, and it worked. So I think that way that genre kind of kicked up. So people started doing remixes of every of their song. So it can be played at the disc at the same time played in a normal coffee shop. So that's what they were looking at. So again, I think it was a marketing perspective, but I think it worked at that time. But again, when you're hearing so much of the same thing, then also people get a little bored, So that was the other downside of it.
Right. So just to kind of, I would say the highlight of our talk was basically what have we learned from people we work with. So in a way to wrap up this session, because people nowadays say don't make a song more than 2.5 minutes long, don't make a video more than 2 minutes long. And we run up in 30 minutes, 1 hour sessions and all. But for people who are interested in this line and are students of music or who are, wannabe music producers or already are music producers, so from your own experiences, starting from say, I'm going by the screen, starting with Meghdeep, Gulraj, and Jim. What are the things you absorb from people you work with? It can be even his dressing sense. It could be even his hairstyle. I don't know. For Meghdeep, it is difficult, but it could be anything, So if you could just share, what are the key things you look into a composer when you kind of work with anybody, new or old?
I think the first thing is the ability to have a bird eye view to every situation. I think because our system functions as a commissioned system. It still is not a collaborative system. There's the orders flow from up to down in the hierarchy, and there's one person who is answerable. Because the music composer who is commissioned is not just writing the song, but is doing say 3 other things. Including selling the song, getting the briefs, coordinating with other people. So I think the one thing that to understand is from the composers that I've worked with is to have the bird eye view, to have a bird eye, to develop a bird eye view for every project you do, and it also makes me understand the value of it, because as whenever we are writing a song, whenever we were producing it or working on the arrangement of it, we are indulgent into it, but the real perspective happens is when somebody else hears it, primarily when the composer hears it. We get to know their point of view towards the song. We get to know that how they think in a particular context, in a particular situation's context. So I think that whole idea of context-based thinking is, I think, although very subtle, but very crucial in my opinion. And I think that is what I always try to learn whenever I work with any composer um, for films. That's my first thing, is to understand their ability to look at things, or their way of looking at things from a bird eye view. Because everybody is different, and every composer is different, and their tastes are different. So I think that's one thing, and more the merrier. So the more composers we work with, the more we get shaped up, because it's like working with different artists and understanding their tastes and their outlook for music. And it is just us music producers who get to sharpen up our skills more, uh, you know, uh, facing newer challenges, facing newer briefs, getting into the head of the composer and understanding, because there are many composers who cannot write instrumental music, instrumentals for the song, who are brilliant melody writers, but then the arrangement, but they do have a vision that they thought that this is what could be done to the song. So what is that seed in their head that is making them envision this? So trying to get into that and trying to understand that has been my effort, and that helps me become a better musician. I think that's one key thing.
Right. Thanks for that, Meghdeep. Gulraj, your learnings from working with different composers, though you are also a composer yourself, like so are Meghdeep and Jim, I'm sure, in their own jingles and other projects. But as a music producer, what have you picked up over the years from different people you worked with? It could be soft skills, it could be anything.
Yeah, actually, there are a lot of things. I mean, when you are working as a producer with a composer, or even when you are a composer for a product, what you're making is, in the first place, not just going to cater to your musicianship or what you want to do. And I've kind of learned this one thing, that it's actually what you do is very subjective, but this is how I derive. Like, it's divided into two things. One is when you're writing independent music, when you're just doing music that you want to do, it's a completely different thing, where you will just probably want to do what you feel like doing, and you may not really have a lot of parameters. It is just you're kind of being very naked to your ideas and your musical personality. But the second part, which is the commission part, when you're commissioned to be a music composer or even a music producer for a composer, that's where a lot of things matter. Like, first of all, any song that you're doing, you're on the job. Even if you're a composer or a producer, you're on the job because probably the person who has got you on board, or who's appointed to the work, is because somewhere he or she felt that you are the right eligible person for that piece of music. But then the responsibility for me, as a person on board for that job, is that I have to also cater to a lot of things. Now, if you're doing a song, it is going to be not just the basic idea. What is the situation in the film? That is one thing. Now, if you're composing a song, trust me, it does matter. Even sometimes when you're doing for a certain producer or a director, all of them have their individual taste. Like, they've been people, as a composer, I'm working. There've been people who've given me all the independence to do what I feel like doing. Probably they followed some stuff that I did earlier, and they just like the way I interpret things. But then there have been times when every director has their own individual taste. So learning to understand that the song or something that you're doing, where it's going to cater, it's going to it has to cut through all these things at the same time. It has to justify the situation in the film, if it's a film song. So your music, if you're a composer or a producer on that job, you have to give your stuff accordingly to the situation in the film. Then the people who are going to approve it, what's their thing. So if you're doing it for a composer, you have to, obviously there will be a brief that has been given to you, and then you have to justify that, and all that. And as producers, we often meet, I mean, along with the composers, Jim and Meghdeep definitely, I'm sure they'll agree on this, that we do meet the director and the other people who are going to approve and who come in the studio to come to the listening session. So it's actually cracking that thing, that you are actually, uh, you know, so how to put it up there, like, justifying all the needs, at the same time the most important part being, really doing justice to the music, that is to be done. And something that I have learned is that I have observed, like, working with different composers, since some years. I It's become, because I've been working with some people for quite some time. I have kind of, I see the work I do for them is pretty much different from the work I do for someone else, because I've kind of, it's like, you get used to, and you get adapted to their styles, and to their tastes. So when you're working with them, it's like you've latched to a certain kind of, a style, and you start kind of doing things in that direction. So that's some, and of course there is so much of learning out of every composer you get to work with, like how we spoke about Rahman sir, for that matter, that how we've learned things with him. That's the thing. I just feel that whatever be your if you're a music producer, or if you're a composer, whatever be your role at that thing, and especially when you're doing a commission job, it's very important that you individually respect all the requirements, and you kind of get. And there's something I want to share. uh, you know just it may sound a bit irrelevant, but I've learned this as a composer. A lot of times, we comment on something, "Arey yaar, why did you do a song like that?" But now, having gone through the process as a composer, I've learned that as a composer, when you're doing a song for a commission job, it'd be a film or anything, it's not just you. It's not just, I mean, it's not just what you feel like doing and you've done it, because there are so many people, or there are levels of approvals that you're thinking. So a song, when we hear, actually is a product of not just the musicality and the work of the composer and the lyrics writer. It's gone through all those levels, and that's how it's come out. So that's why sometimes, I mean, I've learned that at times we easily comment on some stuff that, hey man, this is not happening, or why did you do it like this? But this is a lesson I've learned, that, that's another art. Probably you develop with time and experience, and making your work through all those filters, and still trying to give a good product. So yeah.
Right, right. Jim, you have I would say a 30-year plus
Yeah.
experience as a
Oh
musician,
yes.
as a producer, composer. So I'm sure
Yeah. That is
you've
true.
learned many things, and you picked up many things along the way, interacting with different people from
Definitely.
different parts of the country
Definitely.
and the world. So
Mm.
if you could share with us, what have been your learnings? What have you learned from different people? Like I said, it need not be regarding music, or do you just tell them, this is my identity, this is what I bring to the table, I will play and
Oh.
compose or produce music according to what I know and what I am? Do you preserve that identity, or do you change your playing based on who you're working with?
That completely depends, because I feel, at least now, see, in the early days it's different because you're still trying to create an identity for yourself. Right now, I think maybe after so many years, maybe you have an identity. People know this is your kind of work. This is, I'm sure this, because there are a couple of my fellow music producers who called and say, "Hey, did you work on this film?" So I said, "Yeah, I knew." I was telling my wife, this should be definitely Jim who's done this. So suddenly there seems to be an identity, which I have no clue what that is about. Maybe I do a lot of interesting chords, and my progressions are a little different. Maybe it's like that. So that way, creating an identity for yourself, that way now people know that. So that is why. So if you're getting called for some work, it's maybe because of the identity you created. So you've been called in because maybe you're good at that genre of music. So I don't see somebody calling me for a very classical Indian classical piece, because I have no clue what that, because that's not the kind of music I listen to also. So and my knowledge in that is very less, I would say. So so if I'm called in for a particular job, it's because they know that maybe I should be the right one for that, or maybe I could help with that. Coming back to learning from people, I think maybe let's say, sorry, but here I need to mention names. See, the thing which I look at Rahman most, what you need to learn is a word called hard work. I've never seen anybody work as hard as that guy. He's just unbelievable. If he's there at the top, it's because of the hard work, I would say. I'm not saying that the others don't, But the kind of stress levels he goes through, but at the same time, he sees to that everything is delivered on time. Maybe that we shouldn't use that word. The producers will get angry with us for that. But I'm saying, see to that everything is to the best of in terms of quality. So it's a product, it's a package which comes out is like, so everybody's just waiting and saying, wow, this is. But if you just look behind that, the amount of sleepless nights and hard work, so there was a time I remember sitting at the studio and I was doing some score. Then there was another person programming something, a rhythm for a song. There's live percussion happening one side. There's chorus happening downstairs. So much of activity. And he has a flight to the US or something, US or Singapore somewhere for his show. He saw to that everything was sorted out. He came, he sat with me. Okay, this is fine. Keep this, that. So everybody got their brief. He sat with everybody. It's not like, okay, he can easily have his assistant look into everything, but he personally came and sat through, So that I think is hard work, giving the best to a product. Another session where because I used to work daytimes and they work in the night. I remember heading to the studio by around 10. So I was just entering the studio and I walked towards my room and said, hey, I could see somebody sitting in one corner. So it was Rahman sitting there. So I walked up to him and said, no, I haven't slept. So much of tension. So there are a lot of times being friends, we just don't talk about music. Most of the time we just talk about other things also, a lot of spiritual things and, life in general. So I also went, so man, you said, no man, so that day he literally opened up and he said, no, a lot of stress, So that's when you could think about the amount of stress because his music school had started by then. He was with that. His shows are happening one side. There are like 3 or 4 films happening simultaneously, all, deadlines to meet and things like that. Through all that, so the kind of, and plus he's got a family, think of it. But here we want to go catch our 8 hours, 10 hours of sleep. Here's one person who's, hard working to the core. That is something. Now moving on to Harris Jairaj, what I learned, that was a big learning experience for me because going there and working for him for background scores, I think that was the first time we really got into programming for a score. And he was very particular that when you're programming something, don't switch. Most of us tend to switch off the dialogue. So he says, no, you need to keep the dialogue on so that you give space under the dialogue so that we don't have to duck the music. So if you have to value the note a little longer or play subtle, maybe keep your arrangements down so that we don't have. So this was something which was a good learning curve because most of the time we know what the scene is, we know what the dialogues are. So we immediately mute, we start programming. And then, and most of the time, even previewing it to directors, I've seen a lot of people mute the dialogue because the dialogue may be noisy or now with all the technology you can create, pull down the noise and, and even when Harris sits along with me and he wants to listen to a piece, I might have kept the dialogue. No, keep the dialogue up. And then he'll see there's one note which is playing under that's disturbing. Keep it simple. So he likes to keep things as simple as possible. So looking at it, something like, see, when from an audience point of view, giving them something very easy to digest, nothing very easy. For us musicians, we always look at a lot of technicality, in terms of musically also, in terms of chords, arrangement. But then only when you go there and sit in the theater, it's like, man, there's so much happening. No, why did we do this? So that's where Harris comes from, that school where keeping it simple at the same time relevant. That was a great learning experience. With SEL, I would say biggest thing which I've seen them was the respect they have for a musician. It's just unbelievable. It's just brilliant, I would say, because wherever they might be among big directors, lyricists, producers, but if they see you, they just get up and come and give you a hug and say, hey, how have you been? And we just get into talking. No, like, okay, you're a musician. No, there's no hierarchy there. It's not like, okay, I'm singer, I'm music director or music producer. We are a music family. That whole thing is like really, I really like that, which respect for another musician. The moment you introduce somebody else and say, he's a musician, so they get very excited. It's like, oh, you're a musician. What do you play? Do you sing or do you play? So that brings in a lot of interest. What about Preetham? That's very interesting. I don't know. There's so much to say. He's so chaotic in his own way. But at the end, when you look at the product, what comes out at the end is like something amazing. there's a little magic in him. And again, another guy who, through all that stress, he's always smiling most of the time. And that's something which to learn from, I would say. Anybody else I've left out? Ilayaraja, how can we forget him? A man, I would say, what you can learn from him is discipline. Discipline in terms of music, in terms of his timing. 7 o'clock of this recording, I think by 6:30 or so, he's there in his chair and he's waiting for the musicians. So that's the kind of discipline. And the kind of deadlines they faced. They need to finish a song in like 5 hours or so, and they churned out that kind of music. There's something to learn from. So when you look at that, because a lot of times even we also, as musicians, we get carried away in terms of, oh wow, we did the song, this is great, and kind of tends to go to the head. So sometimes these things can help you to. Rahman is very grounded, extremely grounded in his own way, extremely. So the one trick which I would like to tell viewers, maybe before they're going to watch this, is like, when you're working for music directors, try to understand the person in terms of their character, because everybody's got a different character. And the moment you talk to them, you know exactly where they come from. And sometimes have a conversation as to what kind of music they listen to. Because see, everybody has a musical influence which has come. We all grew up listening to something, and so that's why I tend to look at every music director. They all have a soft corner to maybe a particular instrument or maybe a particular style of music. So when you incorporate that in their music, they'll never say no. It's a little trick where you can get your tunes and maybe your arrangements approved also, because they like that. They might like, like I remember early days, I think Sandeep used to like harp. So when you just put a little harp which is playing like a kind of pattern throughout the song, he used to love that. If I put in any guitars on Preetham's track, he'll never say no to it. He'll never say remove those guitars, it's disturbing. So he's got that weakness towards that. He'll never say no to that. Unless he's looking at a very electronic song, obviously, which is never going to come to me. So like that. With Rahman, what happens is I also tend to, because I think almost all of us grew up listening to his music, so we know what his style is. So I also try and keep it that style. But actually, when you look at it, he's looking at something different. So he's called you to do your style, not his style. That's also. So you say, we've done it too often. Let's try a different approach. So that's it. So I would say for people to understand musicians, talk to them. You get to know what they like. So it's going to take a couple of days or so. But the third day, okay, this is what he wants. You can just throw in things. It'll work. I think so.
Cool. Jim, thanks for running us through the different experiences and learnings you've had with such great names. And you yourself are a very good musician and very well respected. And guys, thank you, all of you, for spending time and coming along at such a late hour and making me stay awake.
My eyes are closing slowly.
And it's a great session we had, in the sense, at least a lot of learnings that we could share with viewers who are from different parts of the country, and having them in one window thanks to the lockdown or whatever you call it. But this could have been not possible without your experiences that you're openly sharing with the viewers, and thank you for that. And
thank you for having us.
Yes, that's true.
Most welcome. So thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
You too.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye, Gulraj. Bye, Adi.
Bye, Jim. Bye, Meghdeep. Bye, Aditya. Take care.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.